Welcome to the Awesome Pod Mix. You are listening to Abby. The idea behind this podcast was to talk about how certain movies and TV shows made me feel when I watched them for the very first time. A reputed filmmaker once said, "When a piece of art invokes a similar feeling amidst a large audience, it is the triumph of the filmmaker." That's the magic of cinema. I love the magic of cinema. Today, I'll be talking about the sixth and the season finale episode of Marvel Studios' Moon Knight. Whether Marvel creates movies or TV shows, they are all cinematic. This episode's title is Gods and Monsters, written by Daniel Iman and Jeremy Slatter, Peter Cameron and Sabir Pirzada, and directed by Mohammad Diab. After the previously on section, the Marvel Studios title sequence begins over the music of Earl Grant's The End, very fitting as we are in the season finale. Arthur's men drag Marc's corpse to the side to fetch Ammit's Ushabti. They find it and pass it on to Arthur. Arthur apologizes to Marc and leaves the golden scarab with him. Arthur says, "I'm sorry, it had to be this way." Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, or whoever else might be in there. Layla is watching all this from behind the statue. She kills one of Arthur's men and takes their place. Arthur holds Ammit's Ushabti, asking, "Who wants to heal the world?" Arthur holds his croc-head cane and purple energy surges through it. One of the crocodile heads transforms into an axe, while the other stays as the croc head and growls. Arthur and his men leave. Layla comes up to Marc's corpse and sobs. She then kisses him on the forehead, bidding him goodbye. Layla notices the golden scarab. She picks it up, it levitates and points in a direction. A fleet of cars driving on the sand get onto the road. A little ahead is a checkpoint of the Egyptian Patrol Agency. They ask Harrow to step out. Arthur steps out of the car and calms his crew. The patrol agency men point their guns at Harrow and his men. One of the soldiers asks him to show his papers. Harrow denies and demands that those men need to show their souls to him. Harrow uses the cane and judges their souls. Only one good man survives the test. Layla gets down from the vehicle and is all set to stab Harrow. Taweret relays Marc's message using the soldiers' dead bodies. Arthur's men arrive at the pyramid. He uses his cane to open the gates of the pyramid. The stones make way for Arthur to get in. Inside the chamber of the gods, Osiris/Selim is worried about the disturbance. Yatzil reveals Ammit is being released. Osiris figures it's Harrow. All gods assemble against Harrow, but Harrow's cane kills them all. Layla sneaks into the chamber of gods and finds Khonshu's Ushabti. Harrow breaks Ammit's Ushabti and Ammit appears in her crocodile head form. In this scene, Ammit says Harrow's scales are unbalanced. Harrow realizes that his penance has not corrected his unbalanced scales. He's accepting of the unbalanced scales regardless of the outcome. I never thought Harrow would be okay to sacrifice himself. He reveals he has an army of followers whose scales perfectly balance. But Ammit chooses Harrow to be her avatar. How is that fair? Layla stomps on Khonshu's Ushabti and sets him free. Khonshu, being Khonshu, tries to manipulate Layla into being his avatar. Layla refuses his offer. Make her an offer she wouldn't refuse and learn something from Taweret. Layla holds Khonshu responsible for Marc's awful nightmare of a life. Ammit and Khonshu catch up like long-lost friends. Harrow figures that someone is here who released Khonshu. At the Field of Reeds, Marc finds the peace and quiet he longed for. Taweret reveals he's manifesting everything he wanted in life and requests him to enjoy the peace. Marc wants to go back for Stephen. Taweret warns that Marc will never be able to come back if he leaves. Marc believes Stephen deserves better. So do I. Marc rushes back and finds Stephen still frozen in the sand. On Earth, Khonshu tries to play every trick in the book to make Ammit not choose Harrow's loyalty and him as her avatar. But I thought Ammit already chose. Maybe he's trying so that she reconsiders her decision. At the Duat, Marc makes a heartfelt speech to Stephen. Marc says, "From the moment you arrived, way back then, we were so young. You saved me. I survived because I knew I wasn't alone. You were always there, alive, full of hope. And I tried to protect that, and I failed, and I couldn't protect you." Marc starts to freeze in the sand. Marc says, "But you didn't abandon me. You didn't abandon me." And although the field back there was looking pretty good, there's no way in hell I'm gonna abandon you. You are the only real superpower I ever had. If I were in Marc's place, I would have said, "I love you, Stephen." Marc places his heart on Stephen's hand as if they're sharing one heart. Marc freezes. The gates of Osiris light up and open. As the light falls on the heart, Marc and Steven, frozen in the sand, come back to life. Marc and Steven get up, holding each other for support. Steven says, "Marc, you came back. What the hell is wrong with you?" Marc says, "I did a whole little speech there." Steven says, "It wasn't that little." So he did hear everything. Steven spots that the gates of Osiris are open. On Earth, Ammit and Khonshu get into a fight. Back in the Duat, the sand waves are approaching to engulf Marc and Steven. Marc thinks he's slowing Steven down. Taweret comes right on time to divert the crashing sand waves. Marc and Steven run toward the gate. On Earth, Ammit is ready to show mercy if only Khonshu begs for it. Marc and Steven make it back to the upper world. Khonshu senses Marc's presence on Earth. Ammit is about to hit Khonshu, but he vanishes into thin air. Marc is resurrected. Marc says, "Khonshu." Over a montage of shots, we hear Khonshu's offer. Over the shot of young Marc and Randall entering a cave, Khonshu says, "I feel the pain." With the word pain, the shot changes to Marc on the street breaking down on the day of his mother's Shiva. Khonshu says, "Inside of you." Over the shot of Marc dying when he became Moon Knight for the first time, Khonshu says, "Do you want death?" Over the shot of Layla, Khonshu says, "Or do you want life?" So Layla is Marc's life. Over the shot of Marc dying before he became Moon Knight for the first time, Khonshu says, "Do you swear to protect the travelers of the night?" Over the shot of Marc becoming Moon Knight, Khonshu says, "Rise and live again." The shot transitions to Marc protecting Layla from the bullets. In present day, Marc gets up and bullets fall out of his body. Marc adjusts his sleeve and the Moon Knight costume wraps around him. Marc walks out of the tomb and finds Khonshu waiting in the distance. Marc realizes that Layla must have turned Khonshu down. Khonshu says, "Ammit has been freed. I wasn't strong enough to stop her. Marc, I need your help." Moon Knight transforms into Mr. Knight. Steven says, just curious about something. How is this new arrangement gonna work then?" Even though Khonshu is not speaking to Steven, they do come as a package deal now. He's gonna have to deal with him. They did save his life, and he's welcome for that. But Steven insists he answer his question about the engagement. Khonshu says, "You would negotiate now with so much at stake?" "Now is precisely the right time, Khonshu. Now is precisely the right time. They did learn from the best. You silly old bird." Khonshu gives his word that he'll release the both of them. Khonshu changes day sky to night sky, and Moon Knight glides in the air. We see a shot where the cape stretches and appears like a bat against the full moon. Osiris is trying to get up. Layla helps him. Osiris asks if Layla is the one who released Khonshu. Layla asks how to stop Ammit. Osiris reveals they need to imprison Ammit in a mortal form inside the Chamber of Gods because it is their most powerful place. Layla figures it needs to be a body instead of a statue. Before Osiris can reveal how they can imprison Ammit, he dies. Layla asks Taweret for help. Taweret appears in Osiris's body. Taweret says, "Layla, I'm so thrilled. We'll have so much fun together." Harrow and his men realize Layla is around. Harrow charges toward Layla while she runs for her life. Harrow uses his cane spars and the earth starts to shake. Everything around Layla starts collapsing. Layla accepts Taweret's offer to become her avatar. Correction, temporary avatar. Taweret reveals Layla's father would be so proud. She met him when she took him to the field of reeds. So we know Layla's father went to Egyptian heaven. Harrow reaches atop the pyramid, uses his cane and chants something in ancient Egyptian. The eyes of Ammit's followers glow and the scales tattoo appear on their wrists to judge people of Cairo one by one. The souls travel to Ammit and she devours them like the dweller in darkness devoured people's soul in Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings. Ammit grows as big as the size of the pyramids and becomes stronger. Layla steps out of the rubble in costume and metal wings as Taweret's avatar. Marc arrives in the Moon Knight suit. He climbs the pyramid and meets Harrow halfway with the full moon behind them as they fight. Marc and Harrow battle it out in the air while Ammit and Khonshu fight on land. Marc and Harrow crash land. Khonshu overpowers Ammit. Ammit asks how are the both of them any different. Khonshu underlines the fact that he only punishes those who've chosen evil. Ammit uses her hair to break free from Khonshu's grip. Ammit makes Khonshu an offer to be by her side. Harrow is about to use his cane on Marc. Right on cue, Layla glides over and saves Marc. She uses her wings to deflect Harrow's energy blasts. Marc and Layla hug each other and check if both are doing okay. Steven compliments Layla on her costume. Ammit asks Khonshu, "Why fight knowing you'll fail?" Khonshu replies, "Because it's my choice, the very thing you take away." Khonshu and Ammit continue to fight. Layla, Marc and Steven take on Harrow and his men. Marc and Layla fight Harrow together. When Marc and Layla manage to overpower Harrow, Harrow uses his cane to blast a family escaping in a van. Layla flies over and saves a young girl and the family in the van. The young girl asks Layla, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" Layla replies, "Yes." I love that they did this. Harrow blasts Marc with purple energy and says, "Young Randall would have been saved if Ammit was allowed to rule. The only weed that needed removing was you, Marc." That's really harsh of Harrow. When Marc tries to use his Moon Crescent weapon, Harrow deflects it. Layla's wings are nailed to the van by the Moon Crescent weapon. Harrow manages to blast off Marc, and Ammit is about to impale Khonshu with his own Moon Crescent staff. Harrow stabs Marc with his cane and Marc winces in pain. Harrow's men shoot at Layla. She deflects the bullets with one pair of her wings. Marc feels helpless and he blacks out. When he regains consciousness, he's defeated Harrow and has broken his cane. Layla asks Marc, "What was all that?" And Marc says he blacked out. Ammit drags Khonshu away. Layla suggests Marc to get Harrow because she knows how to stop Ammit. Marc carries Harrow inside the Chamber of Gods. Layla says, "The power of this room will help us bind Ammit to Harrow's body. Grab my hand so we can start the spell." Energy starts to flow from Marc through the statues of the Aeneid, forming a circle around Harrow as Layla and Marc chant in ancient Egyptian. Ammit is disappointed in Khonshu as they could have made the earth their paradise. Ammit decimates into purple energy and is bound to Harrow's body. Ammit in Harrow's body says, "You can never contain me. I'll never stop." Khonshu wants Marc to kill Harrow and Ammit. Marc is reluctant for a moment, but he still goes ahead. Layla stops Marc. She reminds him that he's free and he has a choice. Khonshu thinks the only choice is vengeance, because if she lives, she'll kill again. Marc realizes Khonshu sounds an awful lot like Ammit. Marc demands to be released. The transformation takes place and the screen bleaches to white. Back at the Duat asylum, Steven asks Dr. Harrow if this is what reality looks like. Dr. Harrow reveals that the imagination is very real, but Dr. Harrow doesn't believe that Khonshu and Ammit are real. Marc disagrees. Dr. Harrow says, "Then my work continues for as long as it takes." As Harrow walks, we see his sandals leaving bloody footprints. Dr. Harrow is confused. Marc says, "I don't think you know as much as you think you do. It's tempting to accept your diagnosis, Doc, but we rather go save the world." Later, Gators. As Marc falls back, we see a dolly zoom on his face. We see Marc and Steven waking up in Steven's apartment. The song "A Man Without Love" by Engelbert Humperdinck plays in the background. There are 2 goldfishes in the aquarium now. Steven can't believe it worked, and Marc can't believe that Steven lives in this frickin' mess. Steven gets up and walks, but falls face smack to the ground due to the ankle restraint. The screen fades to black. The end credit sequence begins. Mid-credit scene. The camera glides through a rubber ducky dressed as a doctor, a white sheet of paper with brush strokes in green, and a green cup filled with sand. Arthur spills the cup, and it turns out there was some liquid instead of sand. Arthur Harrow is in a psychiatric facility. The nurse sees the spilled cup and suggests it's Harrow's bedtime. A man dressed in black arrives and suggests he would take Arthur instead. He speaks Spanish. He's a hit with the ladies. The man takes Arthur in the wheelchair and we see 2 nurses lying dead, one in the corridor and another one behind the desk. The man dressed in black takes Arthur outside the hospital. The limo door opens. We see Arthur's reflection along with the man dressed in black. When he bends to lock the wheelchair, you can see the profile shot of Oscar Isaac. This must be Jake Lockley with his signature cap. He throws Arthur inside the limo. He puts the wheelchair away but kicks it in the end. We see the psychiatric facility's name, Sienkiewicz Psychiatric Hospital, which is a reference to Moon Knight artist Bill Sienkiewicz. Inside the limo, Arthur sees Khonshu dressed in a suit, just like in the comics. Arthur smirks because he knows Khonshu can't hurt them. Khonshu reveals that he gave Marc this impression that he wanted Layla as his avatar. Khonshu doesn't need anyone else because Marc doesn't know how troubled he truly is. Khonshu introduces Jake Lockley to Harrow. We see his eyes reflection in the rear view mirror. It's the third identity of Marc. He must be the one who set that date with Dylan. Jake turns to show his face and we see him sporting his signature cap. So every time Mark or Steven didn't remember what happened around them, it was Jake doing his thing. Khonshu is the scum. He's been manipulating Mark since forever. It was Khonshu all along. Did Khonshu make Mark kill his brother Randall? We won't know until we see the origin of Jake Lockley. Jake speaks in Spanish, which translates to, "Today is your turn to lose." He pulls out a gun to shoot, and Arthur asks him to wait. Jake shoots Arthur Harrow. The limo drives away, and we realize they are in London. The Frank Sinatra song, "My Way of Life," plays in the background. The license plate reads Spectre, SPKTR for Mark Spector. The finale has been disappointing to say the least. Just because episode 5th was so good, I knew 6th episode may not be as good. Though Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, and May Calloway have performed exceedingly well throughout the series. You can listen to the Awesome Pod Mix and subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. If you like what I'm doing, I'll soon be launching the Awesome Pod Mix page on Patreon and you can support me there.